Hello, this is Mike Madden and you're listening to the Arts Show podcast. Here you will find interviews with artists, musicians, authors and anyone else in and around the arts. Some of the interviews are recorded direct from the Arts Show on Expat Radio, with one or two specials in between. This show features David Boni talking about the highs and lows of his role as director-producer in the forthcoming Stranglers film. It was originally broadcast on Expat Radio on the 14th of February 2019. Due to licensing restrictions, we were unable to play the songs from the original broadcast.
Morning, chaps. How are we?
Good morning, Dave.
Morning, how are you?
Very, very well, very well. It's lovely and sunny here. I don't know what it's like in the UK at the moment, but it's about 134 in the shade here at the moment.
It's about 34 in the shade here, and that's Fahrenheit.
Oh, lovely. That's what I want to hear. That's why I moved abroad.
Very sunny, but cold.
Lovely.
It's not raining in Glasgow, so that's cool.
That's not normal. What do you mean?
It's not normal. It's not normal, you're right.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon if you're in France. This is Mike Madden on the Arts Show on Expat Radio. Now, this morning, if I mention to you songs like Nice and Sleazy, Peaches, No More Heroes and Golden Brown, they are all iconic songs from an iconic band. And I'm delighted this morning to have Mr. David Boni on the show. Good morning, David.
Good morning. Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, nice to be talking to you today.
Now, David has been a lifelong Stranglers fan, but he's also... he's got another interest in the Stranglers in that he's the producer-director of a forthcoming Stranglers film. So, David, just tell us about how you got involved in that.
Yeah, sure. So I originate from advertising. I'm an advertising photographer and commercials director. And I think in 2010, a friend of mine put me forward to do some work, just to do a portrait, a picture of the Stranglers for an up-and-coming tour. And having been a fan, they knew I'd been a fan as a kid, probably in the 80s. They knew I'd want to do it. So sure enough, we met up. I shot the images, and we all got on really, really well. And it started a sort of relationship which has lasted ever since. However, it actually came about when they released the last studio album, Giants, where we'd been asked to come up with an album cover, and because they are who they are and they enjoy being controversial, and I enjoy winding people up and a bit of controversy wherever I can, we chose to hang them in a children's swing park. I don't know if you've seen the album cover, but you know.
I have, yes.
Slightly distasteful, which is always fun. And then we did an advertising campaign where we hung them on digital billboards, and it got a lot of attention and created quite a lot of excitement, and I enjoyed that. And because I come from an advertising background, and which I love my job, however, it's nice to do something a bit more substantial. I approached them about making a film about them, but at that time it was I just wanted to do maybe a behind-the-scenes film about the Giants tour, just to celebrate that album and that stage in their career. But I enjoyed it so much, I just couldn't stop. It was we went on tour with them. I'd never done anything like that before. I knew them fairly well, but it was clearly way bigger than just a half-hour show about Giants or an hour about Giants. So I just kept hanging about, and I just didn't stop. And it went over several years. Actually, it started out with a friend of mine and myself, because at the time, having done commercials, I hadn't really done much long form. I was sort of, my expertise was between 10 seconds and a minute, really. There's an art form to that, making commercials. But I really fancied having a go at some long form. So I teamed up with a friend of mine who had done long form. And also because it was always going to be low budget, he had all the equipment. He'd done long form, very successful little films. So we chose to do it together. And that's how we started. And then, sorry.
No, so this was it 7 years ago you started on this journey?
Yes, it was. Yes.
And obviously, you will have film from the last 7 years, but you must have had to gather some archive footage as well.
Yeah, no, I have. No, that's been fascinating. I have to say, I've watched a lot of documentaries and I fancy doing this, and I've had so much fun doing it. It's fascinating to do, and if you're a fan of anything, studying a subject in as much detail as I have, it's been a joy to do, and in doing that, meeting fascinating people. I've got hold of fans from the very first fan, a chap called Gary Coward Williams, who took the very first pictures of them, who by his own admission were rubbish. But the band asked him to come back, and he became their number one fan. He was the first person who went to gigs because he liked the music, not because he knew them. And I've spoken to Jill Furmanovsky. I managed to get hold of it. It took me a year. There's not a lot of archive that's not known on the Stranglers. But I managed to get 25 minutes of Super 8 footage from the North American tour from 1978, which nobody has seen. Not even the band have seen it. I'm the only person, and the people who have been helping me are the only people who have seen it, because when I got it, it hadn't been digitized. It had been processed and possibly projected a couple of times. So this is beautiful footage of the band in a club where there's no distance between them and the fans. They're doing the original Rat dance. They're poking the guitars into the audience. It's down and dirty. JJ's got his top off, and it's phenomenal, sweaty, dirty, gnarly footage. And I just the fans are going to absolutely love it. I love it. I think it's stunning. So yes, it's been quite a job trying to get hold of the archive, but we're getting there.
Well, it's as you say, it's 45 years since they probably hit the music scene. Although they came to the fore really in the late 70s with a succession of successful albums and singles. But coming back to your film, it's one thing to decide to make a film and start gathering all the information, but there's a lot more to it than that. So how did you think you would actually put this all together and get it out there?
That's a good question. Well, at first I thought my friend, who was an editor and or is an editor and a very talented director in his own right, we were going to do this together. But when we started, we didn't have a penny. It was our own money, and so that's how we chose to do it. But that relationship, working relationship, didn't really pan out. So the film sort of ground to a halt nearly for 2 years, until I'd sort of touted it about trying to get funding, but I'm not Scorsese, so people weren't tripping over themselves to give me money. So eventually, I tried everything I could, and then eventually we put it out to the fans and asked them if they would kindly pledge or crowdfund it. And not knowing what the response would be, we went to pledge. We made a little film, just a little taster, and within 24 hours we reached what our initial target, which was, for me, was absolutely mind blowing, because it was great. On one hand, it proved that there was a thirst for this film. I hadn't expected it to be. I hadn't expected people to want it quite so much, and that on one hand it was fantastic and an endorsement to go and make it. But on the other hand, I felt a little bit of pressure because people want this, because no one's done it before. So that was a great start, and so that allowed me to employ the right people. A chap called Julian Schwanitz, a BAFTA-winning DOP, is director of photography, who specialises in documentaries, and an amazing editor called Bernie McGurk, who both specialise in documentaries. And so what I did is I gathered all the footage from behind the scenes, because it was exclusive access I've been given. No one's had the access I've had with the Stranglers, and so we collated all the information that we had, that we'd done probably over 4 years solid filming. In the 2 years we went quiet, I did bits and pieces, but not too much. and then the crowdfunding. We raised the money in March, and then I had to just go for it. And so I more or less made most of the film in under a year, which is, yeah, it's quite a big ask actually. So, but anyway, it's happening, and it's we're nearly there, very very close to finishing it, and it's been an absolute joy to do.
And it's that seminal moment, isn't it? Once you reach your crowdfunding target, it's gone from a great idea to, oh no, we've got to get this done now.
Yeah, it's a commitment, and because it's crowdfunded, this is a labour of love for me. I've as I say, I've been working on it over a 7-year period. It's not about the money for me. It's not about me earning a wage. At some point, that I may get something from the film. I'd like that to happen, but it's not my motivation. My motivation is, as I say, I've been working in advertising. I wanted a project. I wanted to do something that would be less disposable than advertising. And to me, the Stranglers are one of the greatest British bands that have been overlooked, and they haven't had a film made about them. And this is it. In 100 years' time, when people are reflecting and looking back at music from that time, this will be, because people will have stopped reading by then because nobody reads anymore, this will be the reference. This will be what people will look back as a starting point to study and just be aware of what they achieved and how incredible they were.
I completely agree. I mean, we get a lot of authors on this show, and one of my concerns is that people just don't pick books up anymore, particularly children. And I guess in 100 years' time, there won't even be audiobooks because you'll just be sat in a driverless car with a video on.
Yeah,
I never
thought of that. I thought I'd maybe have a chip in my head, but I'd rather have a driverless car with a screen. That'd be good. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Anyway, the probably the most commercially successful of the single of the Stranglers was the one we're just about to play. It's Golden Brown.
Right, chaps, we're back live.
Dave, good morning, everybody. So this morning on the Art Show, I'm talking to David Boni, and David is the director-producer of the forthcoming Stranglers film. So, David, we talked before the break about how the film got started and the ideas for it. But once you'd got the funding and once it was a definite project, you had to form your own company and manage everything properly. So, just talk a little bit about Go Boogie Films.
Sure. So, I have my own company for my stills and my commercial directing. But for this, it's not uncommon when people make a film to set up a company to run the company, to run the film through a bespoke company. So I set up a company called Go Boogie Films, and so everything, all the money that was kindly raised from the fans through pledge, was run through Go Boogie. So that makes it really easy for accounting purposes. It means that I'm completely open and transparent about how the money has been spent. And it just means that I can separate it from my normal day-to-day business. And, I can run all the money through it, pay the various people that are required. And it's just a very clean way of doing it. And hopefully if I ever do this again, this will be the first of many films that Go Boogie produces, or ideally I direct, which I would love to do again.
And obviously with this company, like you say, you're producing the Stranglers documentary, but there must be so many different aspects of it that you think, okay, you're a filmmaker with a background in advertising, obviously a music fan as well. So what was unexpected on this journey for you?
Oh, right. I would say the finances. The finances have, without a doubt, been the biggest headache. And I think this is the same for all independent filmmakers. The actual process of making the film has been an absolute joy. The filming, the interviews, the touring, the being backstage. That's meat and drink to me. That's what I do with my work. There's nothing unusual about that to me, and it's been an absolute pleasure to do. But in my day-to-day, I have producers who work for me. I have people who help me quote jobs. I have people who run the finances for me because I'm more of a creative than a business guy. And so, but on this, because it's such a small budget, and I don't have the luxury of, through most of it, of having people to help me with that, I've had to do a lot of that myself, and it's the management of that, but also the funding. It's not been ideal, as people know. Pledge, the company, got themselves into a bit of bother, and that's not been ideal. But also, like all films, when you create a budget at the beginning, it's a guide. It's your best guess, and you try and overestimate, not ridiculously, but you try and overestimate how much you would need. Also bearing in mind that we're crowdfunding. I had no idea how much money we could have raised to do this, so it was quite a modest amount of money for a film of this scale. It was a very, very modest amount of money that we'd sort of asked for, but we underestimated it. The edit is by far the most involved, and it's the most expensive part of the film. But equally as all the parts, as equally as important as all the other parts, and it's where we actually make and create the film. Now, we estimated 12 weeks for that. I think we're now into week 17 or 18, and there might be another 2 weeks to go. So already there's a huge chunk of money that we've gone over budget. Now that's not through mismanagement. It's not through not being nose to the grindstone and head down. It's just making a film like this. We have 40 hours of interviews. We have, over a 6-year period, nearly 7 years of behind the scenes footage from all over the place, and we've got years of archive to play with. Now, it's the most complicated jigsaw you can ever imagine, and there's an infinite amount of possibilities. So when you get into the edit, and because by my nature I'm determined to make this as good as I can, I'm pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and I'm not stopping until it's done, and therefore we've overrun. We've not overrun. Films of this scale, what I know now is that films of this scale, you need 6 months to cut a film like this properly. And I'd sort of said I'd try and do it in 3, which now, in hindsight and with experience, I would never do that again.
It's interesting, the thing about editing, and if you overrun by 5 weeks, it's 5 weeks of time, 5 weeks of money.
Yes.
So all that has to be taken into account. But for those new to crowdfunding as well, you do have to offer something in return for crowdfunding, and you have to tier those offers. So if you pledge more money, you get a better return. So how did you structure that?
Well, again, I was absolutely stunned at the response when it was mooted that we could do a premiere. That'd be great. Then we do a DVD, special DVDs with extras, and they would be signed, and they were priced accordingly. And I was amazed at what people were prepared to pay for this. But the thing with crowdfunding, the pledging, as it were, is okay. You might be buying a product that ordinarily you pay a lot less for. But actually, what it is you're helping to make a film that you want to make that will never be made if we don't do this. And in return, you will get a product with a perceived value to it that is exclusive to you at the time. But also, you're part of a bigger thing. Everyone who is invested is now, as far as I'm concerned, is part of this film. They're the people who have helped make this. I'm driving it, but without them, there'd be nothing to drive. It'd be impossible to do it. So we did various DVDs. We did special edition DVDs. We did a DVD signed by the band, and we did a premiere type screening, which is in the Ritzy in London, a beautiful old cinema, where the band will be there. I can't remember if they're actually going to play or not. They might do an acoustic set. I can't remember. You maybe know better than I do. And there'll be a Q&A with Andy Kershaw, and I'll be there. Not that anyone will want to ask me anything, but so the band will be there, and it'll be a really the people who have pledged they're the hardcore, dedicated fans who have followed the band through thick and thin for over 40 years, and so they're desperate for this. So on the night of the premiere, I've obviously projecting myself to that date quite regularly now and imagining what it's going to be like in the room. And I honestly can't wait. I think it'll be a really incredible night. I think the energy in the room will be. I think they'll be excited. I think there'll be a lot of pissed people. Excuse me, the language, but I wouldn't be surprised if people were shouting at the screen at some point. I'd be quite pleased with that. And I think there might be a few tears, hopefully.
I think it'll be a very dramatic night, and of course, I think it's at the 12th of April, and it is. Yeah. Time's ticking by to that one.
Yeah.
So you've spoken to many other musical directors and filmmakers throughout this journey. So what kind of advice have they given you?
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. It's really on paper. The process is super simple. You get a camera, you do some interviews. You find an editor, you transcribe it, you write a really broad script, you take it into an edit suite and you start cutting with the archive that you've got, and you've got a film. That sounds really simple. But then, going back to the money, then you realise, how are we going to keep the lights on here? This is harder than you think. This archive's really expensive. I can't get hold of this archive. These people don't want to release it. Or they're prepared to release it, but they're only going to give you 30 seconds, but I want 3.5 minutes. So it's been in a lot of respects the most joyous thing I've ever done. It's the biggest single job I've ever done, but by far the most stressful job I've ever done. And throughout the process, you're wondering if you're doing it right, you're doing it wrong. And so I started to get in touch with other directors, music doc directors. I got in touch with a chap who did the recent Damn documentary, a chap called Paul Fagan who did an Aidan Moffat film called Where You're Meant to Be. It won a lot of awards, and another guy called Grant McPhee who did New Gold Dream. And to a man, each of us have similar but different stories about. It's almost like survival. It's people who make these films. There's always somebody driving it. It's always stressful, especially at this stage, and it's always really complicated. And it was nice speaking to them to realise that I wasn't alone in this, in the sort of perceived drama of it. But also, they gave me advice about how to deal with archive, what to do about money, how to release it has been also. I'm still trying to work out the absolutely best way to actually release and distribute the film, because distributors now they can see value in the film. They're tripping over themselves, but they take a lot of money for the pleasure of that, but they don't necessarily. It's yet to be seen what they can offer, and that these negotiations are still going on. And this is advice I've taken from these other directors. One chose to distribute it himself completely. He seemed quite happy with that. Other people went down the distributor route and fell foul of those situations. So it's a balancing act, and we're still working out how to do that.
And now that you're on the final stretch of this film, obviously sort of a couple of months away from the premiere. So knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently?
Oh, I wouldn't have started till I'd had more money. I'd like to have set it up so I could have had a little bit of a wage, although that wasn't desperate. But with regards, honestly, I can't reiterate enough. The filmmaking process is really straightforward because I have experience in that. It's just longer and bigger than I've normally done. It's 100%. It's 100% a film of this scale. It's the money. That's the headache. That's the thing that's kept me awake night after night after night, and it's probably one of the things I've spent most time dealing with on the film, other than my creative role as director. But luckily enough, now we're in a phase of the film now where I now come into my own, where the film is built. I saw an edit the other day. It was 2 hours 23 minutes long, which is too long, but that's a great position to be in. It allows us the fat to edit it down, and we're now, Bernie McGurk and myself, the editor, we are now at the stage where we're now creating the film and the essence of the film, and it's really exciting. But money, in answer to your question, sort out the money.
And it's quite interesting. You say you're down to 2 hours 20 minutes, and I guess a standard film is probably around about 85, 90 minutes.
Yeah.
So, do you have any sort of battles or discussions about that? Absolutely must be in, or we can throw that one away.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, editing a film like this, it's a little bit zen, because I've always had I've had this idea in my head for a long time of what I want the story to be. It's not just a history lesson of the Stranglers. And so to get from A to B, I've built all these scenes and I've told all these stories, but then the film sort of takes a life of its own. When you start to shape it, you have to let the film almost lead to you, to where the best moments are, to turn corners in the story. And so just yesterday, we've got a big sequence about Iceland. And it's a great story, undeniably a great story. But compared to the way the other stories have turned out, we're like, do we need that now? So it will either get whittled down to a fraction of the size it is, or it may go. So these are decisions which are happening now, because it's only now that we're now looking at the whole film and the whole story. It's not finished, but it's all in front of us now.
Now, but by trade, I believe you're a photographer.
Yeah.
But you're obviously quite skilled in filmmaking now as well. So where do you see yourself going after this movie?
I don't know. I'm quite intrigued. I'm going on holiday. That's the first thing. That'll be the first thing. Yeah. First of all, I just want to get the film out and enjoy watching it do whatever it does, being enjoyed or not by a perceived audience, and then just see what happens. I would like to do another documentary at some point, definitely. Whether it's a music documentary or something else, I don't know. People might phone me up. They might not. I don't know. I would like to go back to stills for a while, because stills is like a holiday compared to this. I love my day job. I like it more now than I ever have, but now I dream of just doing a stills job because it's a breeze by comparison.
Well, I think we can give you a little bit of a break now, because we're going to play another very very iconic Stranglers song. This has become a bit of an anthem at the gigs, and it's Always the Sun.
We're back live with the chaps now.
Good afternoon again, Dave. Good morning to all those still in the UK. This morning I'm talking to David Boni, the producer-director of the forthcoming Stranglers film. And before the break, we've talked all about the film and about David's career as a photographer, but also an independent filmmaker. This has been a labour of love for quite some time now, and you said you'd be glad to get on holiday and this, that and the other. But can you ever see yourself making another music film?
Yeah, I'd love to, actually. Yeah, I would. I am a music fan, and what this allows you to do is I've had such a nice time. I had a brilliant time with the band, and it gives you exclusive access to these people that people would pay a lot of money for, and it's a privilege to do it, and it's a buzz. It's an absolute buzz to do it, and yeah, I would love to do it, but it would be nice. Our film is a film that charts the entire history of the band right up to the present day. We might even film in March on the next tour, so it will be as current as we can possibly make it. But I was just watching the David Bowie documentary yesterday, and it's a documentary about one guy over a 5-year period. That seems so luxurious to me, because you can tell one story in a lot of detail, where I've got a big story to tell. And I'd love to go into it in more detail, and maybe one day Netflix will allow me to cut a series out of it, because I could make a series out of it. But yeah, I would love to make another music doc. I think it would be brilliant, actually.
I think it's it's quite right that the Stranglers get this kind of a documentary, because as fans see the band live, they'll get the albums. They might see a few snippets on the news or in newspapers, but fans are always thirsting for more. And I think this is a great outlet for the fans to just learn a little bit more about the day-to-day band.
Definitely. I mean, one of the again, it's always a creative proposition. What's the message? What you're trying to do here? And as I said, When I asked if I could make a film, it was the easiest pitch I'd ever done. I asked, "Can I make a film?" They said, "Yeah." That was basically the end of the conversation. But then, what is the angle here? Now, the Stranglers fans they know a lot. Hardcore Stranglers fans know more about the Stranglers than I do, even though I've made a film about them. So, what could I give them that they didn't already know? And to me, it's access. So I'm exploiting that now in the edit and in the film. I'm in a lot of dressing rooms, and we're seeing them. We're seeing them just before they go on stage, before they come off stage. You see the odd, a little bit of emotional outbreak, not too much, but they're going to see them how I think they've never really seen them before. And the interviews, when I studied the interviews when I took this on, having known them, because I'd known them a few years before I started making the film, to me the interviews weren't them. That when you go into YouTube or previous interviews, they were playing a character, and to me that wasn't JJ, that wasn't Baz or Dave or Jet. But now having spent a lot of time with them, I've gained their trust and confidence. And one of the things I enjoy most about the film is how candid they are and how relaxed they are and how honest they come across. And I think they play this big hard man, scary post-punk characters, but they're not really like that. And I think this really comes across in the film. They can be like that, and that was a stock and trade. But I think I'm showing them in a way that hasn't been seen before. And I hope the fans get a lot of pleasure from that.
I think going back to when I first came across the band in the late 70s, they did have this image, and I guess that was because they were on the back of the punk phenomena, but they've outlived that, and one of the reasons they've outlived it is because they are very, very good musicians.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call them a punk band. I don't think they're a punk band. I think they're a rock band, and a really good rock band. They got caught up in the punk scene and they used it and exploited it to their own ends really intelligently. But I wouldn't say they were a punk band. I'm not entirely sure. I think their behaviour was punk. I think their behaviour was more punk than punk itself. But I wouldn't say the music was punk. And also the reason they've stuck together is the music is good. It's extremely diverse. It must be one of the most diverse catalogues of music out there. I can't think of many that are more diverse. But also, they were really bright. They played the media, and it was a two-way thing with the media. And they got nasty headline after nasty headline after nasty headline, which just made them more famous, made them more popular. And they manipulated the press in a really bright, intelligent way. Sometimes it did go against them. I mean, they blew America. They most definitely blew America. They could have been one of the biggest bands in the world at the time. But they blew it with their own antics. By their own admission, they got up to some stuff which just, people just wouldn't do these days. I mean, bands now, they come out and are fully formed and they're all media trained and they wouldn't say boo to a goose. And, if they do pull a stunt, it's really contrived. But these guys weren't doing that. They were setting fire to the curtains in the office of the CEO of the record company. They were taping journalists to the top of the Eiffel Tower. Their antics were ridiculous, and you just wouldn't get away with that now because the business has taken over, and that sort of rock and roll punk ethos is just not acceptable to the modern world now because the modern world is vanilla.
I did notice that if you go to the Apollo is the place they always traditionally end their UK tour. And many years ago, I used to go to the Apollo, and it was sticky floors, plastic glasses. If you happened to surf the crowd or get to the front, you were almost certainly going to get lifted over, and the bouncers would give you a bit of a roughing up and throw you out. Whereas now, it's got a nice posh bar, proper glasses. You get crowd surfed over the barrier at the front, and the bouncers, they dust you down, march you to the side, and then you're back in again. And it's completely changed.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And again, the luxury of doing this job is I get to go in the pit as long as I like. I stand on the stage as long as I like. I can stand next to them if I want to while they're playing. I don't want to intrude. And I get to watch the fans, and it is amazing. And one of the things we talk about in the film is the Stranglers are a band who have been about for over 5 decades now. That's a long time for any band to survive, even with personnel changes like they've survived. But they're going out on an upward trajectory. They're playing to bigger and bigger audiences each year. But the crowd, although it's full of middle-aged men with bald heads and ladies without bald heads, obviously, there are kids. There's children, there's grandchildren, and we've got lots of footage of kids in their teens. And it's a question I constantly want to ask. Why are lovely young women or really cool young guys following this bunch of guys who collectively have an collective age of over 250 years? Why are they going to see them again and again and again? What is it about them? And I think this is part of the film, and we explore it a little bit. What is it about this band that is so attractive? They don't have long to go. We all know that, and again, we address that in the film, and I think we take it head on. But they are not. If you, no disrespect to any other act from that genre, the Eagles, whomever, they do a very good job, and they're amazing musicians. But they stand there, and it's quite passive. These guys are still doing high kicks. JJ's doing his jumps. They give it their absolute all. When I've got images of them backstage, and they're broken. They're absolutely done in, and they do it night after night after night. And these guys are nearing the end of this part of their life, this part of the Stranglers, because it can't go on forever. But they're going at 100 miles an hour, and it's foot to the floor, and all credit to them. And that, to me, I find that incredible.
Well, we can explore that a little bit more after the break, but the time's flying by now, and we're gonna give another blast of the Stranglers with Duchess. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. This is Mike Madden on the Arts Show on Expat Radio, and we're into the final few minutes of talking to David Boni. It's been a fascinating conversation now. David, we're talking obviously about the Stranglers, and before the break, we were talking about their longevity and how they appeal to the younger people of today. And I think part of that is that their music has been used commercially in quite a few places. For instance, Golden Brown is prominent in the film Snatch. And in the same way that Billy Elliot brought T-Rex and Mark Bolan to the youth of today, I think Snatch did the same, as did other films. How do you look at the Stranglers and their appeal to the masses?
Yeah, I put them under the category of national treasure yet to be discovered. I think, as I said before, I think they're a band which have been overlooked. But what I've experienced over the last few years, and in the short time I've been with them, the crowds seem to be getting bigger. They're more diverse. And you'll see in the film, right down the front against the barrier, are kids in their teens, women in their early 20s, down there pogoing, bouncing about with guys in their 50s and 60s. And it's a really, really, really diverse cross-section of people. And we discuss this in the film, and we wonder why. And I think it's just they've made amazing music. Their music is exciting, and it's honest, and they put on such an amazing show. They're a live band. They're most definitely a live band. They've never gone away. Every March now, where they are in their career, every March they do a tour. They play 20 odd dates all around the UK, and I think all of them sell out. And it's a brilliant night, and people hear about it, and word of mouth. And I also think there's something in the ether that people know that they don't have long to go, and now is the time to make the most of them. And everyone listening here, if you have a chance, if they come to your town, or if you have an opportunity, you should go and see this band, because there's nothing like it. There's nothing like this on the road at the moment, and these old guys will give you a run for their money because they are amazing.
I completely agree. And we are running out of time now. I think we've got about 3 minutes left. So I've got two very quick questions. First one, you told us a little bit about what's unique about the film from your perspective. You have access. Is there anything else that you can just give us about the film? What can the fans expect?
Well, this will be the ultimate telling of their story. It's from start to finish. It's from 74 right up to the present day. There's a lot of actuality. There's a lot of archives that people will never have seen before. They'll see the band in a way they've never seen them before. It's emotional. I think it's not a straight rock doc. It's a history lesson to a degree. But to me, it's a celebration of these guys' lives and their music. And yeah, I don't know how to finish that punchline. I think I'll end it there.
Well, let's just give you one final question before we play the final song, and that is, in terms of the Stranglers, you've had great access to them. What's your favourite Stranglers moment?
Oh, wow, I wish you'd give me warning for that. I don't have one in particular. I love going on the stage. I have to say, I'm not going to lie. Being allowed to wander on while they're taking an encore with a camera makes me feel like I'm part of that gang, and I will never forget that. It's an absolute joy and a pleasure and a privilege to be part of this organisation, and just it's an amazing experience.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today, David. One of my favourite shows, definitely. And hopefully, good luck with the film. And when it's out, hopefully you'll come back on and tell us how it all went.
I will do, and see you at the premiere.
I will see you at the premiere. And we're now going to play out with No More Heroes. You've been listening to the Arts Show podcast with Mike Madden. Come back soon for more artists, authors, musicians and anyone else connected with the arts. We're going to play out with Mike Sanchez and I Don't Stand a Chance.
And baby, you hiding something that you don't want me to know, because I'm getting a vibe from way down the side, like you're just about ready to go. If you can't tell me where you stayed last night, you just can't cope with treating me right. I'm on the road to heartbreak. Now's the time to tell me so, because I'm getting a chill like I'm gonna be ill. I know you don't want me no more. I won't be satisfied with your little white lies. Girl, I've only just begun to realize I don't stand a chance. I don't stand a chance. You don't wanna know and I can't make you dance. Well, I said goodbye. Find yourself another guy. I wish you were mine, but I'm losing my mind. I don't stand a chance. This man, on the road to heartbreak. Now's the time to tell me so, because I'm getting a chill like I'm gonna be ill. I know you don't want me no more. I won't be satisfied with your little white lies. Girl, I've only just begun to realize I don't stand a chance. No, I don't stand a chance. You don't wanna know and I can't make you dance. Well, I'll say goodbye. Find yourself another guy. I wish you were mine.